Welcome to another movie plot and enjoy the memories. We open at a cabin in the woods with comic writer Colin Childress working late in his cellar studio. His monster's design is a straight-up plagiarism from an old leather-bound book with a pentagram burnt into its cover. Nobody else knows about this demonicon, however, so Colin uses the dread-inspiring pages as inspiration for the latest issue of his popular horror comic. It's never explained how he obtained the book in the first place, and he doesn't even need to speak in Latin to summon a demon with it. His illustration appears behind him looking like a bodybuilding koala bear and attacks the young woman that Colin just drew. He runs upstairs and grabs an axe that I think was also conjured by his doodles and returns to the cellar ready to fight Yogi Bear. The monster has already killed the woman who we learn later was a singer and attacks Colin, spilling a bunch of flammable liquid. It's described in the textbook as part werewolf, vampire, ghost and demon, and eats artists because it feeds on creative energy or something silly like that. Colin picks up pages of his comic and sets them on fire, causing the living counterpart to perish alongside its illustration like a hairy Dorian Gray. Unfortunately, the spilt paint thinner also ignites, trapping Colin downstairs where he burns alive in the house fire and presumably never finishes his comic. Fortunately for the movie, however, the Book of the Dead conveniently falls into an open chest and survives the fire. It somehow even padlocks itself inside, where it remains for 30 years until some comic artist named Whitney arrives to screw everything up. The house also survived the fire unscathed and is now a colony for artists, but those pretty flower paintings on the walls ain't fooling nobody. Whitney meets the rude head of the school, Mrs. Briggs, and tells her that she's here to gain inspiration from the home of the late author. Briggs is confusing because she dislikes Whitney for drawing what she calls cartoons, but then likes art that looks like leftovers from Make-A-Wish kids. Whitney gets a tour of the fire retardant home and says that she wants to follow in the footsteps of the late author. It's a strange thing to say since he's accused of murdering a woman before taking his own life, but the Cellar Dweller comics are just that good. Briggs tells the guest that the cellar is off limits because that's where the crime was committed, but that seems to just attract Whitney more. She immediately breaks the rule and goes snooping around the cellar when suddenly a zombie doctor charges at her with an axe. It's her imaginary Colin who kills the half-naked woman on the table, as this is all just a fantasy of the writer's twisted mind. She then meets the leggy performance artist Lisa and the Make-A-Wish finger painter with an aggressive gaze named Phillip. He barges into Whitney's room to say, "Aren't you a little old for comics? But this dude's art looks like he paints in crayon." There's a whole exhibit of these horrendous fingerings that are so bad some guy shows up with a gun and threatens to shoot Lisa. The crime novelist Norman is just another resident who waves around his unloaded gun for giggles and also thinks the paintings are crap. The final resident is Whitney's longtime rival Amanda, who doesn't have any real talent and today's job of choice is just videographer. I'm unsure why everyone hates Whitney so much, but the moment she walks away, Mrs. Briggs conspires with Amanda to get rid of her. During the night, the new guest wakes up from a nightmare to hear screaming and assumes it's coming from the basement, but it's from outside. She looks to find Lisa screaming into the darkness like a lunatic as she's doing some vocal exercise thing and has no regard for the other guests. The two have a drink together and talk crap about Amanda behind her back before heading inside, where screams are still heard from the basement. Lisa says those ones are coming from the ghost of Colin, then laughs it off as she goes to her room, but we never actually learn what the hell it was. Whitney sneaks into the cellar for real this time and finds the lighter from the beginning that was used to burn down the house, though it looks pretty fine. Phillip follows her downstairs for a jump scare and to hear Whitney's position that she doesn't believe Colin set himself on fire all those years ago. She thinks he was murdered alongside the girl and says it's the only explanation, but there's also the possibility that he was just a twisted killer. Whitney soon finds the somehow locked chest sitting untouched from 30 years ago and breaks into it because we're stealing now, I guess. She finds the dust-covered book of no good, very bad things and begins reading it aloud like somebody who's never seen a horror movie before. Despite his proficiency for crayons, Phillip ends up being one of the smartest people in this movie and skedaddles before the wannabe Latin. Desiring to work in the same space as her inspiration, Whitney convinces Briggs to let her use the cellar as a studio. Normally she would refuse, but it means that the artist will be out of the way and she can open the bedroom to somebody she actually likes. This also gives Amanda the chance to spy on her with a camera through the window in the least subtle stalking I've ever seen. Somehow Whitney doesn't notice her and just renovates the cellar back to pristine condition, with Phillip proving himself an actual painter with the wall restoration. He then returns to fingerbanging his canvas while Whitney gets started using the book to inspire her comic because that worked out so well the last time. Just like Colin, she straight up copies the art and story, as whatever demon-worshipping cultist wrote this thing originally had some serious talent. Since it isn't illegal to steal from Satan's Bible, Amanda fakes video footage of Whitney plagiarizing Colin's work instead. Based on new panels being drawn up for her comic inspired by Whitney's annoying rival, the Dweller appears in Amanda's bedroom. It then goes all Looney Tunes when she draws a banana peel that appears at Amanda's feet, causing her to slip over. She then draws away the doorknob, causing it to vanish, so Amanda's torn to pieces and eaten by the monster as foretold by the doodle. As gory as these moments are, the most horrific thing in this whole scene is still Phillip's finger painting in the background. The next morning, Briggs discovers Amanda missing, and apparently the monster can clean up all the blood after itself but can't fix doorknobs. She brings it up at breakfast, but Whitney says that she's happy to never see that woman again, which Norman finds suspicious. He's a retired detective and wonders if Whitney could be the killer, so while they're all distracted by Lisa doing whatever the hell this is, Norman breaks into the girls' rooms and begins searching around for any clues. He steals Whitney's latest work before going to Amanda's room and finding the tape that depicts her as a thief. She's edited it in a way that has Norman assuming the murder was all done for revenge and could probably cause real problems if it were to ever get out. Fortunately, that doesn't happen, as the Dweller returns to behead nosy Norman and eat him before he can report the findings. Unlike her drawings of Amanda that brought the murder to life, Whitney never draws the pages of what happened to Norman, and they just appear out of thin air. She realizes that the rest of her artwork is missing and discovers it in Amanda's room, with the edited tape making her look like a thief. Confronting Mrs. Briggs about her involvement with spying on the guests, the manager's just like, "I have no idea what you're talking about." Phillip enters to say that Norman has gone missing as well, and even Lisa turns on Mrs. Briggs because her loyalty is to the colony. Trying to figure out what's going on, Whitney reads a curse in the book about bringing the demon to life through illustrations and thinks, oh, that must be what's happening. She finds pages that she never drew depicting Lisa being attacked in her room and rushes upstairs, where she's currently having a shower. When realizing her towel's missing, logically a soggy Lisa goes walking around the place completely naked to find it. I guess the monster took it as the only explanation when it corners her in her bedroom and tears her apart following a tremendous scream. Whitney and Phillip finally reach her bedroom from the cellar, only to see their friend being eaten right down to the last eyeball. They try to get away, but the demonic Sasquatch appears at every exit, so they're forced to retreat into the cellar because that sounds like a safe place to avoid something called the Cellar Dweller. Whitney blames herself for summoning the demon that feeds on creativity, but Phillip lightens the mood by saying that Amanda probably gave it diarrhea. She grabs a lighter intending to burn the pages, but the creature reaches out and pulls Phillip inside where he's drawn being attacked. Honestly, I'd burn them both, but Whitney doesn't want to kill her new friend, so goes upstairs and tries to explain the situation to Mrs. Briggs. It's hard to say you aren't to blame when you're the only person not missing, but Briggs just gives her the "oh, you've read too many comic books." Just then Whitney notices their conversation drawn on the desk in front of her, and like the comic panels, Briggs transforms into the Dweller. I'm not sure if this was the Dweller talking to her the whole time or it just killed Briggs in this moment, but Dwelly chases after Whitney as more pages appear. She retreats into the studio where everything happens as shown in the comic except for the part where she's torn apart at the end. While she's hurling jars of paint at the monster, she accidentally spills some white out on the pages, causing the Dweller to disappear. It tries to re-emerge from another panel, so she destroys all of her artwork depicting it, which is easier than burning down the whole house. As she mourns the loss of Phillip, who she just splooged into oblivion, Whitney realizes she can just scribble him back into existence. She draws him defeating the monster and leaping out of the pages to embrace a very sexualized illustration of herself. Phillip appears with the monster chained up and suggests that Whitney bring back everyone else, since apparently that's something she can do. A few doodles later, she even brings back Amanda for whatever reason and doesn't even draw an arm growing out of her head. The next thing is to torch every drawing containing the monster, which seems simple enough to defeat it once and for all. Unfortunately, that big writer brain of Whitney's lets her down, and she also burns the pages containing the artist by accident. One by one, Phillip and the other colonists burn alive, leaving Whitney all alone with nothing but the ugly finger painting for company. A new page appears saying that the Dweller can't be defeated so long as people have imagination, as it presumably finishes off Whitney. And the movie ends.